Well, let's talk now to the National Party leader, Simon Bridges, who's just rejigged his lineup, and we'll get to that in a moment. Good morning to you.
Morning, good to talk to you.
Just firstly, on this police pursuit policy, we've been discussing it at length this morning. What is your view about whether the police need to change their strategy in this area?
Instinctively, I'm very sympathetic to the police. It's a very tough thing that they have to do, make an instantaneous decision. And I don't think, in a sense, we want to let people off the hook. People should stop, and so I worry about that. All of that said, I know that the AA will have done their homework. They are calling for some sort of a review and a look at the evidence around the world. And so, given they're saying that, given I take them seriously, I'd support that. I mean, I think it is worth, given the number of deaths and serious injuries we see from this, having a bit of a look.
Okay, let's move to your reshuffle. You've shown a couple of those ones have been around for a while. The door, haven't you? Nick Smith, David Carter, Gerry Brownlee.
Look, I think what is true is I've got 56 MPs, a lot of talent, there's a lot of ambition, and rightly so. I can't have them all in the top 20, 25. And so when you're trying to blend experience but also bring through new talent, by definition, some people go back a bit. I don't think it's a reflection on them. I think what I've tried to do as well is give them serious responsibilities, because I do need a team driving at the 2020 election.
Yeah, but the message to them, and this is fact really, isn't it, given that you'd only have, say, 20 in a cabinet, you're saying to Nick Smith and David Carter and Gerry Brownlee, I don't see a future for you as a minister, even if National win again in 2020.
No, not necessarily. I mean, certainly Gerry Brownlee's at 11, I think, so he's on the front bench of the National Party. You look at Nick Smith, what I'd say is he's been given some very significant responsibilities in electoral law reform. There's a lot going on there that troubles us, that we oppose strongly, and he's our man to lead that.
Why is Amy Adams a better finance spokesperson than Stephen Joyce?
I think for where we are right now, she's got the experience, she's got the acumen.
Well, hang on, has she got the experience? I mean, he was the finance minister.
Yeah, sure.
Well, my question was, why is Amy Adams better than Stephen Joyce?
Look, I think I really rate her. I've seen her up close and personal, and I know she's got what it takes, and I think you'll see that over time. I look at her background in commercial law, in business, and I think she's the right blend and exactly what I want to see in finance at this time.
Was Stephen Joyce crippled by the $11.7 billion hole that wasn't?
No, not necessarily. I just think ultimately it was a more positive decision for me. I wanted Amy. And straight up, I wanted Amy whether she stood in the leadership against me or not. And so that's what I've done. Stephen could have, if he'd wanted, had a very significant role.
What did you offer him?
Look, he really would have had a choice of portfolios, because I acknowledge his experience.
So was the choice like a Model T, any colour as long as it's black, but in reverse, anything as long as it's not Minister of Finance?
He could have had a very significant role. Ultimately, he made, I think, probably for him, the right decision for his family and for new opportunities outside of Parliament. And I wish him a lot of luck with that.
Why should Phil Twyford not sleep easy at night?
Because I think in Judith Collins, we've got someone who is very good at attack. We see this as an area of real weakness for them, because they've talked it up a lot, but I think Kiwi Build is going to be a shambles ultimately. I don't think it's going to see more happening, and she will be the right person to lead that. I'd say one more thing about that, though. It's more than that. She's actually a very intelligent person with a string of degrees, and you will have seen there I've also given her RMA reform, and I think that's an area where, in addition to that attack role, she'll be leading some very positive work for us.
You got nothing done in a decade on RMA reform.
Reality is we didn't have the numbers. It's a very frustrating area. But I think what we've got now, which we didn't have back then as well, is a consensus, whether it's the Environment Defence Society or Infrastructure New Zealand, that something's got to give.
Okay, let's move to the foreign policy of the government. There's been a bit of focus on that recently. We've had the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister in the Pacific. And on the weekend, the Foreign Minister was on The Nation on TV3 with Lisa Owen, where he was casting doubt on two alleged crimes that the international community has levelled against Russia. One is meddling in the US election, and the other is being responsible, if albeit indirectly, for the downing of MH17. He cast doubt on both of those things in a discussion about him pursuing this free trade agreement with Russia. What are your thoughts on his direction in that area?
I think the interview was troubling, and the reason I say that is I do think we are seeing alternative facts slip in here on the face of it in terms of what he's trying to suggest. I think even wider than that, if you look at what he's been saying over the last couple of weeks, it seems to really be policy on the hoof. It seems to be policy on the basis of personal prejudice. I think we've seen some very big shifts, actually. You've got a situation where China and our view to China, according to him, is going to be much more sceptical. And yet on the other side, he seems to be, frankly speaking, an apologist for Russia, which we know has human rights abuses and a number of very significant issues worth looking quite closely at. And the final thing I would say that is troubling is that issue around free trade and protectionism, and really a staunch defence from him, I think, on Trump and what's happening there. That would be a very big change for New Zealand. And I think go absolutely against our interests as a small country.
Just for context, for those who didn't hear it, on that he said that propagators of the free market should face up and describe why it's not fair for Donald Trump to do what he's doing, end quote. And that is in regards to slapping these tariffs on. What do you make of that?
Well, as I say, I think it's troubling. I think you've got a situation where, just as in foreign affairs, we need the UN, we need to play multilaterally. The same is true when it comes to trade. And there's no way we come out of big protectionist moves a winner in New Zealand. And so I'd like to see the Foreign Minister stand up for New Zealand's position there. More fundamentally, though, I'd like to see the Prime Minister's position on these things, because, as I say, I think you've got some quite troubling statements, some alternative facts, some prejudices, frankly, slipping into our foreign policy. And I'd like to know whether the Prime Minister also supports those positions.
Thanks for your time this morning. We'll leave it there. That is the National Party leader, Simon Bridges. It's 7:45.
And now there's been another breakdown in Auckland this morning. This time it's one on the southern motorway Citybound. It's blocking one middle lane, that's lane 2 of 4, after the Ellerslie-Panmure